coming up in April, it's going to be National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. So important to raise awareness about safe driving practices. And talking about that, we have Duncan McIntyre joining us today. I was just teasing him. No relation to Reba McIntyre, the country singer.
No, unfortunately none. I like to joke that she's cousin Reba. But,
cousin Reba.
In actuality, no connection.
Well, Duncan, thank you for being here today. You're with Schwebel, Goetz Sieben, correct?
Yes. Yep. I'm an attorney at Schwebel, Goetz Sieben. We're a personal injury firm. We're located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we're so thankful to be on today to talk about and raise awareness about distracted driving and give some helpful reminders and talk a little bit about that with you, Kelly.
I was talking with Duncan off the air just a little bit, just about what he does as an attorney and how he ever got into the industry. And you were saying it's kind of a family thing.
Yeah. I'm a Minnesota native. I grew up in St. Louis Park and graduated from St. Louis Park High School. And my dad's an attorney. My mom works at the law firm, and I was so lucky to grow up with that experience and have those connections. And I guess I just followed suit. Yeah.
And here you are. And this is great. So we can talk with you about these things. First, I guess, let's talk about distracted driving and accident cases. I mean, you're in the field, so you deal with this stuff day in and day out. So you can probably come at this and talk with us as individuals. There's things that you see day in and day out, right, going into this field. So distracted driving is one of the leading causes of crashes and serious injuries.
Absolutely. Pretty much always when people give us a call, it's because they're going through something terrible. Something bad has happened, and sometimes we have the opportunity to help guide them through that process. Yeah. So we see everything. We don't just work on auto crashes, but we work on a lot of auto crashes, and there's a significant amount of those that are caused by distracted driving, among other things. And distracted driving is certainly something that we feel passionately about, that we try to take steps to raise awareness and make sure that people go the extra step in being safe on the road.
You think about distracted driving as people sometimes think, oh, that would never happen to me. I can send a text real quick and I'll be just fine. And then you find out something terrible happened because you did something you really shouldn't be doing while you're driving. So when we're talking about distracted driving, I guess what kind of constitutes as distracted driving?
Well, texting is obviously a huge one.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of categories of things that are distracted. And while you're driving, I think the other thing to remember is it's not just one thing that contributes to a crash. Yeah. Right. And so something that might seem small, like maybe you dropped your phone on the other seat in the passenger side and you want to reach down and get it. It's not just, that maybe that only takes a second, but it's the cumulative nature of everything that happens while you're driving that can result in a serious crash. So anything from eating to drinking, working on the stereo. I know in all these new cars, we're all seeing it, that you have to touch the screen and you got to go through 5 different buttons to get to your seat warmer, which as Minnesotans is important to all of us. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's those multiple steps that takes your eyes off the road. And
right.
that there's a couple different categories. There's distractions that take your hands off the wheel. That can be important. There's distractions that take your eyes off the road, and those can be important. And there's distractions that take your mind off of driving, make you think about something else. So there's not just one type of distraction. There's multiple different types.
Okay. So for you, I guess, what type of distractions do you see most often when cases are being investigated?
I think the thing that we see a lot of is small distractions resulting in something big. We obviously see a lot of big distractions, people texting, people having a full conversation with their passenger and totally looking away from the road. We've seen quite a few things, but I think the most common thing that we see are little small distractions. Like I said, that example of reaching into the passenger seat when you don't have somebody there because your phone slipped off the dash and went between the seat and you're just trying to get that. The big thing is that when you look away from the road, your car's moving really fast. You know, when you're at highway speeds, I'm not a math guy. That's why I went to law school. But I looked it up today and in preparation for today and just knowing this, that when you're going 60 miles per hour, you're moving 88 feet a second. At 70 miles, that's 102 feet per second.
Wow.
So in 3.5 seconds, you're crossing a football field, when you're traveling 70 miles an hour. And you think about just reaching down for 1.5 seconds to grab your phone. By the time you look up, if you saw brake lights in front of you, the big thing to remember is your reaction speed is not instantaneous.
Yeah.
So it's not just the distraction, it's what comes after, the time to realize the brake lights in the car in front of you, to hit the brake, and then for your car to actually stop. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than people think. So it's so important to be paying attention to the best of your abilities.
Have you seen those commercials? I think it's commercials on television. I don't know if I've seen it on the internet or on TV, but they show what it would be for you to actually, close your eyes and it just goes dark. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, because that's what it is when you're looking away. It's like totally driving without seeing what's going on. And it's amazing to me that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people don't. It's so easy for us. We get so comfortable driving. We're on the highway. There's no one around us. And it's just so easy for a lot of people to lose that connection to the road. And no one's perfect, know, but it's important to raise awareness and to talk about these kinds of things as a reminder of just how fast things can change.
Yeah. Bad things happen to good people.
That's right.
We're not saying that you're a bad person when you went and looked and you reached over and for that phone that fell down, but now you've hit someone and now you're in a situation where now you're having to deal with some really terrible things.
That's absolutely right. It's not that you're a bad person, but it's important to take those steps in advance to make sure that you're being safe, that you're not giving yourself distractions or things that could distract you.
Yep.
Especially as we move, one of the things that I notice a lot in cars now, I'm sure everybody does, is in new cars, there's a lot less knobs, right? When you want to change the temperature in your car, and we talk about those navigation, going through the screen, that's 3 or 4 extra steps, and you can't feel it. You can't keep your eyes on the road and just feel for, something to twist to turn up the heat or turn it down when your heater's been going a little long and you start to get toasty on that drive. And so being cognizant of that and thinking in advance and saying, okay, I want to set my temperature to something I'm going to be comfortable with before I start driving, as opposed to blaring that heat and knowing you're going to have to turn it down when you're in the middle of the road trying to make a turn and you start to get, hot and sweaty.
Yep, I agree. And I've actually heard that there has been conversation, and I hope there is, that they go back to things that are more simple that you can feel instead of having to look away. It seems like a logical thing. But in the meantime, this is where we are.
That's right.
Right. As someone in your field, as an attorney, what are some of the things that you have to look up, like when you are talking about a case that is involving distracted driving? What are the things that you guys have to do to help a client?
Well, when we get people in, the first thing we do when we start with any new cases is take a history from our clients. We're not medical doctors, but it's important to hear from people who are injured, just like when you go to the doctor and they ask you, what do you think is wrong? When they ask you, tell me about your history, we do the same thing with our clients. We ask them, tell us about your perspective of what happened. And that's always a great jumping off point. But when you've been injured by somebody else's negligence, you might not have seen that somebody else was distracted because hopefully you were paying attention to the road yourself.
Yeah.
So it also goes into looking at the police report. What did the police find? Did they see evidence that somebody was driving distracted? Were there witnesses? What did those witnesses see? And what do they feel happened?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we start to gather information. Sometimes it requires a little bit more. Sometimes we have to get phone records, if we have a reason to believe that somebody was texting while driving or, working on apps. We've even seen people watching YouTube videos while driving, right? And so phones can give us access to some of those records. And in cases where it gets a little bit more extreme, we have to hire a specialist who does a crash reconstruction, whether that's a engineer or retired police officer, somebody who's been trained to reconstruct and determine, okay, how did this crash happen? And they can look at things like the marks on the ground from tires, from hitting the brakes, to see how people's reaction times looked and whether they were following at a safe distance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Advice for drivers? Are there some simple reminders that you can help drivers keep in mind, like when they're out there? I mean, we've talked some things, but what are some other things you could tell us?
Yeah, I think that it's just being smart when you get in the car at the beginning. Making sure that if you're going to listen to a podcast, that you got that podcast started before you take off on the road. I'm an audiobook guy myself, so I always make sure my Audible is started. Sometimes when I'm going on a longer drive, I like to even check how long my audiobook is, so I know I'm not going to be frustrated that it ends in the middle of the drive and feel like I want to check my phone. I'll even double check that. Make sure my navigation is all fully loaded up before I hit the road. And then there's little things too. It might sound like a silly thing, but if you're going to be bringing a water bottle, on the drive, maybe making sure that you're taking a water bottle that's a handle and a straw so you can put it right in your mouth instead of one of those that requires you to twist it with both hands. Now you're taking both hands off the wheel. You're thinking about something else. These little things, they add up. And I think that's the thing I'm getting at with a lot of this. But being a safe driver also comes from more than just not being distracted, right? Yeah. There's a lot that you want to do, making sure your tires are in good condition, your brakes have been checked, because each of those things can contribute, for example, to the speed at which you can stop.
Yeah.
And when you add distracted driving on top of that, it just makes it even more likely that a crash happens. And, that's something we want to avoid.
And I do run into these kind of problems too. Like I've been driving my son to the cities, I guess it's been about once a month for a health condition. And you have everything set, right? You leave the driveway. I make sure that we've got the directions put in there before we leave, because my car basically says, I can't help you unless you put it in there first, right? But then sometimes things will happen with your stereo, or something will happen where I don't even know how to explain it. Like things happen to your system when you're trying to follow your driving directions, and all of a sudden they disappear. And that stuff is kind of scary. So you're trying to fix it on the go, but really probably the best thing to do is, you might be driving down this highway speed, but really to just pull over, go to a gas station and take care of it, right?
Absolutely. I think in the moment we can feel like, gosh, I really just want to keep going. But I think if we sit back and think, I think all of us would agree that no life is worth not taking that five minutes at worst to pull aside and reset the system. I think back to the days of driving to hockey tournaments and my parents printing out MapQuest or Google Maps directions.
Back in the day.
The amount of work that they did to make sure that they knew where we were going and to plan in advance. We all go places, the cities can be impossible to find anything these days, and we all are so used to using those directions. But just being cognizant and aware that taking a minute to just reset that, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think this is something too that's what people need to know. Especially I think about my sons. I think that I would probably know what to do after an accident, but I'm always wondering, would my sons know what to do? I mean, I can tell them, but it doesn't necessarily that, if you're in an accident, you can be in a little bit of a shock. What should you be doing if you're in an accident with someone else? You want to be safe at the same time, but you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing if you are in that accident, as far as, we talk about exchanging phone numbers, or are you supposed to pull off the side of the road? What are you supposed to do?
Well, I think you nailed it when you said the first and most important thing is to be safe, right? Yeah. Evaluate. It's okay to sit for a second. Make sure, is my body okay? How do you feel? Do I need emergency services? And make sure that you communicate with them first, right? I don't want anybody calling us before they call 911 when they need to, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that the right people, the trained professionals, can get there and assist you if you need it. And then after that, you can get yourself out of the street. If you can move your car, if you can drive your car, find a safe place, whether that's a nearby parking lot, whether it's making sure you're completely off the side of the highway.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a conversation with the other driver, get out of the cars and move away from the side of the road before you start doing things like exchanging information. I think that's paramount, that you're safe.
Yeah.
The next thing is, exchange that information. Get a copy of each other's insurance, ID, and document what you can. Take photos of your property damage, the other driver's property damage, even if it ultimately is never necessary. As an attorney, we always say there's no such thing as too much information, right? We want as much documented as we can. And even if you don't ever need to hire an attorney, maybe you do, maybe you don't. The great thing is that our law firm, as well as a lot of law firms, will offer free consultations, So once you're done, once you're safe, give us a call. Then the other thing, get yourself checked out by the medical professionals. Make sure that there's not something that's lingering, that's in your mind, that's worrying you, right? Give yourself that peace of mind that everything is okay. Make sure that you're okay and that there's not something that you're overlooking because you want to get home. I get it. But make sure that you get checked out and are safe.
Yep. Having that kind of advice, for somebody that's been in an accident, and I think sometimes you're in an accident, but you're thinking to yourself, well, I think I'm probably fine, but you may not be fine.
Yeah, we see a lot of people, and particularly in that first week and a half, where immediately after the crash, it's just all adrenaline. You know, your body's all pumped up, and it's hard to realize that there might be something that's a little tweaked, might be a little messed up. Some stuff is obvious. If you have a broken arm, you're probably going to know right away.
Yeah.
But if you've got some deep tissue injuries or something in your neck or back, it kind of takes a while for that. Or shoulders, I know in particular, will take some time to really get to present, because it takes your body a lot of time. But just think about how every single muscle in your body tenses up in a crash like that. There's nothing wrong with making sure and giving yourself that peace of mind by going to see a doctor to make sure that they evaluate if there is anything wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess, you know, at the end of the day, if you are in an accident and you've exchanged all the information that you can with someone, it seems like it's going to be really civil. But then in the end, maybe it ends up not being, or maybe you actually can't reach out to the person with the phone number that maybe they gave you. Maybe this is the time where you say, okay, I think I do need to reach out to an attorney to get some help. How do you know who you should contact?
Well, you know, you're always welcome to contact our firm. We talk to people every single day, and not everybody are we saying, yeah, this is something we can help. Sometimes we're giving people advice on the rights that they have, on insurance benefits that are available to them that they might not otherwise have known about.
Yeah.
And we give a lot of that information as part of our initial consultation when it's required and when it's relevant. But all of our consultations are free, so there's no problem to call in. And we're always happy to chat with people. Our law firm's been doing business in the state of Minnesota for 50 years. Our managing partner, Jim, founded the firm 50 plus years ago, and he still comes into the office multiple times a week.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
That's
still
neat, right?
still does.
Still.
And me as a younger attorney, I get to rely on those centuries of experience of the older partners at our firm, and it makes the services that we provide that much better for our clients.
Well, I guess, what would you tell someone if they believe that distracted driving was maybe involved in their accident?
Well, I think the most important thing to do is communicate that with the people who are supposed to be investigating. In a lot of cases, that's the police.
Okay.
You know, you don't have to go and harass the person who, you know, if you've been in a crash, try to force them to give you an answer. If you call 911 and police arrive or some other kind of emergency services, communicate that to them. Let them know why you think that, and they can note that in their report. And if you do ultimately hire an attorney, like our law firm, that's something that we can follow up on and help you investigate.
Okay. I do think that's so important. Like, you know, if somebody wants to call Schwebel, Goetz Sieben, to know that, you know, when you walk in, you're going to be taken care of. And we appreciate you spending time with us. We're already out of time. I didn't realize we're out of time, but thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Schwebel, Goetz Sieben, if you need their help, they're there for you. Thanks for being with us today. It's time now for news.